unten bei EA, bei Star Wars The Old Republic und hier ist der Emanuel. Er ist Associate Lead Designer für The Old Republic und mir hoffentlich ein paar Fragen beantworten. In most Star Wars games, it's like people really want to play Sith or Jedi. How do you want to encourage people to play like a smuggler, a soldier, or the non-force classes?
Well, there's only so much we can do because the player, they can say, oh yeah, that's cool, but the first character they make is probably going to be a Jedi Knight. And that's fine, right? But there are things we can do, and in the very design of the game, if you want. One is to decide from the beginning that every class will be comparable in power. We don't say, oh, you're Jedi Knight, obviously, you're superhuman. Sure, but also you're one of the best smugglers in the galaxy, so there. So that's the first thing to tell people, it's fair. Don't feel afraid to pick up a trooper thinking like, well, I'm going to be a trooper. They always die in the movie, I'm not going to play that. So it's fair. Another thing we can do is to make sure that all classes have some really cool signature move, and when you see somebody doing it, you're like, oh, maybe I want to play that because that looks really cool. And for the trooper, this enormous gun, for example, that has this really awesome sound. And actually, every time you get a new gun, you have a different sound. But it's a signature move, and like, oh, that's really cool. And the smuggler is the only one that can, on this Republic side, that can take cover. So you're here taking bolt after bolt, and he's like behind the crate, like, hey, I'm safe. So we have a lot of different things. But one of the important things we did was to recognize there would be, at least on the first day or first week or whatever, there will be an imbalance because people will play what they want to play. So we made the game so that even if everybody was to roll a Jedi Knight, the game will still work, right? Even though you need a full group for sorts, like more than one group for an operation, as you've seen today. What matters is not your class, but your role. And each class has several roles. Because the class, very often you pick it up because you're fond of this type of character, archetype, like, oh, Jedi Knight with sword, that sounds good. Or maybe you're fond of the story. You always wanted to be Han Solo, this is your chance to do it. Maybe, let's say, if we said all the smugglers are heroes, which would not make a lot of sense, but let's say we say that, and we're like, well, I want to play Han Solo, but I don't want to be a hero, So, as a smuggler, you got a world choice of role you can take, and people will be looking for your role, not for your class, and so the game still works even if there's an imbalance.
So there won't be a boss fight or anything where you actually have to hide behind an obstacle or something, like with the smuggler ability?
No, again, there's a design philosophy, and in reality, we will always miss something where it's slightly easier for a class. I mean, it's mathematically impossible to predict everything, but the philosophy is that if your role is a certain role, that regardless of your class, you'll be as good at it as somebody else. And that includes making sure there's not a boss fight where only the ranged, class can survive, because what does that mean, right?
But in the raid we saw yesterday,
yes,
in the
Eternity Vault,
there was those turrets.
Right.
Could you melee them?
Absolutely. Okay. If you pay a lot of attention. Like, if you look at that video where we wiped, on EA, I had the melee class, and
you actually
I did
made it yesterday.
Oh,
yeah, you succeeded.
But I was not playing, so what does that say about me? Anyway, I was playing a Marauder, and the Marauder role for that particular encounter was to take down the second turret by himself while everybody's doing all the thing. And the turret is pretty high, so you've got saber throws. But it's on a cooldown. You've got force charge, so we can literally leap and bit on it. But we included like electronics and canisters on the bottom, so melee class can just attack that.
Okay.
And they don't have to go all the way up.
Okay.
So it's one of those things where like we want this for a more story reason. It'd be really cool to have a turret, and the bolt all goes up, and then you have people force charging to it. But we also want a melee class to be, hey, I'm melee, please, can I do something? So yeah.
For hardcore players, it's always important to have new and more content. Are you able to release new content with all the syncing and all the story stuff you do, which takes a lot of time? Will you be able to do it on time to make the hardcore players happy?
We better. That's a great question. I mean, the decision to go full VO, which you cannot understand until you play the game, and we say that for a lot of things, but it's true. You're like, oh, that's a gimmick. No, it's very important to the game, and I think the player will understand it once they play it. Hopefully they will like it. But it makes it harder to develop content. I mean, that's just the truth, right? But it's not as much harder, but it requires more planning. And so we have to have our writers way ahead of the curve from other departments, and that's something, you know, we had a lot of years to learn at BioWare. That's something we are good at. So, but it's something we are very conscious of, and we need to deal, you know, that's kind of the way our game works, and we have to deal with it. But it's key to have fresh content, fresh challenge, and a kind of cadence that people expect. You know, we have to do some expectation, we better deliver, and that's what we are going to do.
With 4 people, 8 people, and 16 people groups, you are have rather small groups in comparison to other MMOs. Why this choice? Why only 4 people?
Because
because we can.
Because we could. Because that's how we design the content. Okay. We had 4 class, 4 people. When we designed the game, we thought maybe it'd be a bit weird, like I'm a knight, you're a knight, we both talking about the same thing, and it would break a little bit the impression. But that was our ideas, way back then. Now we know from playing the game that it's not a problem. It's something that is very natural. It's like I'm talking about Mass Effect, you're talking about Mass Effect. We both done the same thing. It's not, we're like, oh wait a second, I save the galaxy. Yeah. But that was the initial thing. But we built the game on that number and made it work for that number. And it doesn't feel too little in practice. The player will have the final say, of course, but it feels good. So we'll see.
When you first started telling us about Star Wars: The Old Republic, you said we won't have classic rules like a tank and a healer. It was like if you want to do everything with a bounty hunter, you could.
Sure.
Why did you change that?
We didn't. I mean, it's all marketing. We could be another game and say we have a completely different combat system because every class can be nearly everything. Yeah. We have, let's say, on one side we have 4 classes. 3 of them can be healer. 3 of them can be tanks. I mean, that's pretty. And you can change and respec and be completely different. We could market it that way, right? And we could say, no, we're completely different. But the truth is, we find that any strategic game is interesting when people choose a role and need to fulfill that role for the other players, so there's no chaos. Not everybody's just doing damage, and it doesn't matter. But then say, okay, I'm going to do this. But as a player, your class has a huge spectrum of things it can do, and you can respect and specialize into a role. So we are very flexible. Each class can nearly do everything if you spec it, but not on the fly, because you need the proper equipment for it. And so you would suck at it. Sorry, yeah. I tried playing the tank in this Eternity Vault, and everybody wiped instantly because I'm not very good at it. Yeah. So it's important that people get comfortable in their role as well. You can change, but you will have to learn again. And so, it's all about, it's just marketing of whether you have this or you have not. Every game that says they don't have it, yes, they have typical roles. It's just disguised, and I'm not healing you or putting a shield on you. Well, that's great. We have that as well. Bounty Hunter, tanks, and heal you through shield. Sure, we could say that, but we prefer to be clear that people don't get surprised, like, what do you mean I have to tank? Like, well, yeah, it's, it's a mechanic, you have to learn it. And we prefer to be honest and very straightforward about what the game is, and that's what it is.
Do you have any ideas how you would like to encourage people to play tank? Because like when we take World of Warcraft, for example, they recently implemented a feature that you get more rewards if you start as tank. Do you have any ideas?
Of course. Like, I mean, we continue a logic that has been true in other games. That it's not because you pick a role that you're going to be terrible at everything else. So even though tanks are very, very heavy hitters, they still do a lot of damage. And by the way, if you really like being a tank, we want to make sure that, for example, in PvP, you still play a tank, just like you would. And it's a lot of fun, and they are key, actually, to PvP engagement. But beyond that, that's pretty much what you can do. We must ensure that you're very viable by yourself, and that the gameplay itself is fun. That you maintain aggro, get technical through beating down on people and doing a lot of damage. So, and you have a few other tools, but it's still a fun class to play. We just make it fun, and that's what we can do.
Will you be able to respec during an operation?
You cannot respec in the middle of it, and not would it be efficient because of your equipment and so on. And but we do offer respec options.
Just a question that pops into my mind.
Of course.
How many tanks would you need for an operation with 16 people? Have you only one tank, or do you have multiple?
Okay. There's a lot more encounters with really fun mechanics and interesting mechanics, and I'm not going to reveal them. And so I'm not going to tell you because there's a logic to it, and I'll let players discover it. We do want to leave a few things to the player to discover once once we really look like, I know this game, I don't need to buy it.
You giving a huge focus on story with Star Wars.
Yes.
And some people are afraid that they won't really enjoy the story while in a group play. Do you have any? Are you afraid that people will completely solo it?
Okay. So it's a good question first, and it's a legitimate concern. I mean, we know the risk of the project, and we try to look at them, very honestly. One of an interesting risk is when you're a group, there's a certain pressure. Like, you're wasting my time, please go faster. And that's something we had to address. So when we develop, for example, system like the remote call, where you may be somewhere else and I'm waiting for you for the conversation, when you can just call in and you appear as an hologram, so you don't have to run around. And of course, the players started using it in a very creative way. I'm going to turn in the quest, you stay with what you're doing, and then you just join in, get the reward. And so it's interesting. So we are conscious of all those problems, and we try to address them through clever design.
You're at the finish line of your project.
Oh yeah.
And you have really high numbers from Amazon and like the pre-order editions. Does it boost you in your spirits, or what?
Oh sure. Like no, of course. It's a validation.
Or are you going to be tired? Like, oh, finally.
Well, a thing that MMO designers and people that work need to realize, it's a very hard finish line. Like, you work really hard. And if you don't understand that, you're in a lot of trouble. That it's not a finish line at all. It's like not even midway. Like, you launch, well, your work starts now. Everything that can go wrong is going to go wrong now. Wow. So we have to really manage ourselves and saying this is not the finish line at all. It's just actually, once all the servers go live, that's when our work is really going to get intense. But the pre-order is great. Getting a award at that show, getting pre-order is like, oh. Wow, but it's also pressure, like, a lot of people are counting on us.
There was, I think it was a press release that there's a limited number of Star Wars editions out there. Was it a marketing thing, or is that really true?
It's a limited edition. Of course it's a marketing thing. But a limited edition would not be limited if it was unlimited. Yeah. And there's almost no advantage in buying it, except we know that some people are very excited about this game. I bought a limited edition for myself, even though I'll probably get one free from my work, but I wanted one because I've been waiting for this game for longer than anybody else, probably. And you want this kind of limited, will never come again, really gorgeous box just as a memento. And that's what we offered. And again, it's totally optional. So we are not, and once they are gone, we're not going to say, oh, that sold well, let's have another round. It's limited. No, it's limited for a reason. Like every other limited edition of game that ever came out, this is not different from anything else.
My last question.
Of course.
What do you think is the most fun, most awesome part you personally think in Star Wars: The Old Republic?
Ooh. Maybe the war zones, because it's a time where you you know, you have a lot of abilities, and you use them on some bosses, but then the boss is dead, and that was it, right? And you don't use them on weaker enemies, and an AI doesn't challenge you the way a player does. So it's really like, why it opened your eyes, like, ooh, this, you know, I better be good. But also it's so visual, and it really feels like a Star Wars movie with all the bolt and the lightsabers, and they're just fun. And I'm not a huge PvPer at all. I actually started really PvP with Warhammer because there was a certain like ease of use, and the wars on themselves were fun, just plain fun. And I think we really capture that aspect of them. And if you like those one, you will love those.
Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. It was great.
Thank you.